What is going on, Sports Wars? We're here. We're live finally for some more Monday evening quarterback. It's been a couple weeks. We've had a crazy time at Geeks and Gamers. We had the Content House in Orlando. We're doing things all over Florida right now, but we're finally back. And what a week to return because we had maybe the ugliest best ending game that we had in the evening with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Tom Brady finally with the smile on his face. We've got just an ugly game from another great quarterback we're not used to seeing this way. And we've even got some drama with some head coach firings, things like that. Before we get to it, Fear the Beardo, my man who I got to hang out with in Orlando the past week or so. What's up, man?
Nothing much. I'm having a little withdrawals not being in the Content House with everybody coming back to normal life, but getting back to the grind. So, just glad to be here and glad to talk some football after being a few weeks off.
Hell yeah, man. And of course, joining us as always, the great Robert Barnes from sportspicks.locals.com. What's up, Robert?
I mean, we are now at the midpoint of the NFL, so we can talk about who's overachieving, who's underperforming, who might make a comeback and get into the playoffs, who might drop out of that playoff hunt, what some of the trades look like so far. Yeah, I think most of them look like they'll be duds, but a few might be of impact and consequence. And then we got college football playoffs had a major shakeup this past week. Not just Tennessee losing to Georgia, but Clemson and Bama going down. So that a lot of Tennessee fans were okay with that combined outcome because it puts them in the pretty good position to probably still make the playoffs. But we'll get to break that down and the rest. So it's been an and we're on the eve of the World Cup, of course, coming to the rare, I think, first ever Winter World Cup.
Well, as someone, I'm not a big soccer guy. So I usually don't pay too close of attention. Usually I pay attention to the people who pretend to be soccer fans every 4 years for the World Cup. But yeah, World Cup is huge and massive, obviously, to a lot of people. World Series just got over. Congrats to the Houston Astros. Maybe actually did it clean this time. But no, for real, that's an incredible team. Astros are great. Phillies, I thought the Phillies had the momentum going into that thing, even though the Astros hadn't lost in the playoffs, just with that crowd and the things the Phillies had to overcome to get there. But it was a good World Series. Ratings, maybe not so much, but that's what happens, Major League Baseball. But this is a fucking football show. So we might as well get to the football. Robert, you mentioned some of the trades because we did come up by that trade deadline. A lot of names moved for sure. One of the things most impactful to me was the Bears. The Bears made some moves. Yep. They moved Robert Quinn, defensive end. They moved Roquan Smith, who had asked for a trade before the season. They moved him to the Ravens. This is the leading tackler in the NFL in Roquan Smith, a massive piece of that defense. And then you add Chase Claypool to a team that is the low 32nd in the league in passing. What were you looking at in terms of this trade deadline, Robert?
I was looking for who is really going to be aggressive, who really wants to win, who has already given up on the season. It's clear that even though the Bears move told me they mostly have given up on the season, but they haven't given up on Justin Fields. Want to see what he looks like with a receiver, so they went and found whatever it is they could. The team that should have been shopping for a wide receiver, that should have been shopping for all year since they lost Devontae Adams, of course, the Green Bay Packers.
Yep.
But, we'll see how that translates. But Chubb to Miami, I think, was a real smart move. They needed to upgrade their pass rush. Now, he didn't make an immediate impact this past week, but I think he ultimately will. 49ers
and it's clear that the Miami needs to work on that defense.
They gave up 32 points to the Bears. They made the Bears. I mean, Justin Fields is in the top 10 right now in fantasy football points at NFL.com. So it depends on how you rate, how you get it. But that's the NFL's fantasy version. He's ahead of Aaron Rodgers, Tua for Miami, and Tom Brady. Who would have picked that before the season started? He's right there with Geno Smith. Though, as you note, the passing, that's one of those fantasy misleading stats. His running ability is what helps him inflate and pad some of those numbers.
People like Justin Fields' career day, and it's true, he did have a career day, but he had 132 yards passing, I think, or something like that. Did set the regular season single game rushing record for a quarterback.
It was a nice little takeoff there. I mean, I had the Bears on the point, so I was happy to see that. for them to cover. The Falcons managed to give away their game, but that's another story. But I think the best trades will be, I think ultimately Chubb will upgrade that pass defense. I mean, they gave him a big deal as soon as they brought him in, so hopefully they're right about that. And then they picked up the running back from San Francisco, where they have a prior relationship with the current coaching staff. But I think otherwise, I think the trade that I thought was the best trade was the 49ers picking up Christian McCaffrey. Oof. That's a guy that really naturally fits them. I think Tony might be interesting with the Chiefs. If anybody can make somebody, one of those guys that doesn't really fit anybody else's offense, never quite blended into the Giants. If anybody can make something of him, Andy Reid is that guy. Though didn't show up on last Sunday Night Football, where they're at 13-point favorites against Malik Willis, had to rely on overtime to pull out the victory and a late 2-point conversion. But yeah, I think McCaffrey will end up being the best trade. Particularly he doesn't carry a heavy contract either. So I think that was the smartest trade of all the trades that I saw.
Yeah. What about you, Beardo? Was there anything that stuck out to you trade-wise?
Yeah, I mean, the Dolphins really taking advantage of that pick. The 49ers traded up for Trey Lance. The Dolphins turned that into Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, and now Bradley Chubb, and then signing Bradley Chubb to that huge contract. I mean, what the heck is Denver doing here? And there was talks that Denver was even going to trade Jerry Jeudy. You just signed Russell Wilson to this huge, massive contract. You think that they were going to have this huge winning season, and then they go ahead and trade their best defensive player. So now, Russell Wilson's probably scratching his head, saying, I thought this isn't rebuilding. We were, prepared to win. Well, that's obviously not what the front office of Denver thought, trading away their best defensive player. And I agree with Robert. I think that Christian McCaffrey really fits in well with San Francisco. Obviously, he had that hat trick. It was like his first or second game in San Francisco, throwing, catching, and rushing for a touchdown, which is incredible.
Yeah.
And then Claypool. So the interesting thing is that the Packers did actually reach out to Pittsburgh for Claypool, and they were like, no, screw it. You might actually wind up with a better record than the Bears, so we're going to trade him to the Bears because we want that higher draft pick. Well, now taking a look at the Packers just, absolutely stunk yesterday against the Lions. So interesting to see, like Robert said, giving Fields that weapon to see what they have in Fields in the next few years before they ultimately decide if they're going to trade him or not. But a very interesting, wild trade deadline in the NFL.
Yeah, and I think one trade that was massive that even paid off immediately, T.J. Hawkinson to the Vikings. T.J. Hawkinson is a huge weapon for the Detroit Lions. Now immediately made an impact, 9 receptions, 70 yards in his first game with Kirk Cousins. And the Vikings, we may as well talk about them right now. The Vikings are the quietest 7-1 team maybe ever. And a lot of that has to do with Kirk Cousins and the expectations surrounding Kirk Cousins and the inevitable collapse that I think people expect Kirk Cousins to have when all of a sudden they don't have 1 p.m. games at Minnesota. But you got to give it to this Vikings team. They've been in a lot of close games, and unlike last year, they've been winning these close games. Is that sustainable? I don't know. But in a weakened NFC, the Vikings, come away with that victory of the Commanders, and they look very good right now in the NFC North.
Yeah, the Commanders, depending on where you got it, they were a smart money pick. And if you got them at 3.5, you made money. But if you got them at 3, you got to push. The Vikings continue to just win. And so it's, they had a good, impressive opening week win. Then they had that debacle at Philly. And that debacle at Philly kind of defined them in the public impression, and people kind of forgot about them. And you're right, they're the second best team in the NFL right now, at least from a record standpoint. And right now, they're the number 2 seed out of the NFC. They would host the 49ers in the playoffs. If the playoffs were held today, of course, that probably means they'd lose at home, but that's another story. But yeah, I mean, new coaching staff, the defense has played solid enough, and mostly it's Cousins has put up enough. I mean, they've been a little bit on the lucky side when you dig into a lot of the, they probably should be 5-3 rather than 7-1 if you look at post-game win expectancy. Have made some late comebacks to pull some games out, but hey, they've still done it. And so, at this point, it's hard to see them not making the playoffs. It's pretty hard to go 7-1 in your first 8 games and not make the playoffs. So, credit to the new coaching staff and Kirk Cousins bouncing back and having a good year.
Yeah, especially, it'll be easy for them to make the playoffs with the extra wild card. But this is exactly where the Vikings want to be. You want to be the quiet team that kind of nobody's talking about with the great record that's flying under the radar. Because then, you know, when you meet your opponents later on in the season or even in the playoffs, you know, they might not prepare for you the way that they should. So it's always great to be that quiet underdog, great team.
Yeah. And especially in the NFC North right now, where your nearest competition sitting at 3-6 with the Packers and the Bears. And we got to talk about that 3-6 Packers team, because I don't think there is anybody that thought, even with all the offseason drama, everything surrounding Aaron Rodgers, they didn't give him enough help, blah, blah, blah. I don't think anyone expected the Packers to be sitting at 3-6. Now, Aaron Rodgers can go up there in front of the podium and say, "Oh, we've been doubted a lot." This is not a RELAX moment. This is not a relaxed moment. This is not a 1-2 start. This is 3-6, and they look like shit. They put up 9 points against a Detroit Lions team who I think was the worst defense in the league coming into this game, averaging, I think, 32 points given up, and they scored 9. Aaron Rodgers with 2 red zone interceptions. This is a disaster of gigantic proportions for Aaron Rodgers and what could be maybe his last hurrah, his last go-around with these Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, it's time to push the panic button. It's not time to relax like they have time to waste and time to rebuild or for the end of the season. This is time to push the panic button. Aaron Rodgers looked bad yesterday, underthrowing all day long. And where is Aaron Jones? This is the guy just 2 off seasons ago gave a massive contract, and where is he? You're putting bum AJ Dillon, is that his name? AJ Dillon out on the and where is Aaron Jones? You paid Aaron Jones all this money, arguably your best offensive player besides Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers isn't playing like their best offensive player. It's Aaron Jones, and he's nowhere to be found nearly the entire time on offense.
And I will say he did get hurt, I think, in the third quarter last week. But yeah, there's no doubt. There's a lot of people that are frustrated with that time split for Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. As an Aaron Jones fantasy holder for a lot of years recently, it's always been that way. They've always given AJ Dillon a lot of run when Aaron Jones is usually more productive. But yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's they just let go of all their wideouts, and then they've had bad luck with injuries this year with their young rookie wideouts. But that was a huge gamble, and it's a gamble that has clearly backfired, because it's not just that they're 3-6; it's 3-6 losing games to the Giants in London, losing games to the Jets at home. These are not games anyone had them scheduled to lose before the season. So I think that is what really has people worried and concerned. Now, the good news for them is they're in the NFC. So, like, at Super Bowl odds right now, one of my Super Bowl best odds bets would be to take the Packers, because they're coming out of the NFC. If anybody can bounce back, it is Aaron Rodgers, and they're right now at 160-1. So there, you know, that nobody would have seen that coming before the season. You're talking about a team that is year in, year out under Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, been 20-1 or better in these Super Bowl markets, and now they're 160-1. And the only reason why they have a chance, in my opinion, is because it's the NFC. You look around the NFC, and you know Seattle's doing well. You know, I mean, how well they'll continue to do so, we'll see. But you really have a chance if you can get it together. But you're right. They got to get it together now, because the clock is ticking and they're losing every second that they need in order to be able to have a decent season. And given what they paid Rodgers to come back with that huge contract, they didn't pay him to miss the playoffs.
Yeah, for sure. And now I want to head over to the AFC for a second and talk about the AFC East. Now, the Jets had a big win yesterday over the Bills. You've been talking about the Bills for a long time, Robert, about how the Bills tend to kind of play to their competition a little bit, tend to maybe struggle in some of these games that they really should win. And the Jets have had a good season. There's no doubt that Robert Saleh has that team believing in themselves. They're keeping their receipts. They play inspired each and every week. And it's great to see that the Jets are good again. It's great to see that both teams in New York are relevant again, to Beardo's Giants point. But there is something that is much, much bigger than just what happened yesterday, and that is Josh Allen. Because if Josh Allen is hurt, if he is seriously hurt, the Bills' season is over. And as of right now, in what looked like a little bit of a weird tinge in his elbow, looked like something that didn't quite feel right in the later stages of that game, a lot of people chalked up to, just got tackled a weird way. could be a lot worse. Bills' Josh Allen says he's feeling slight pain in right elbow after loss. Sean McDermott gives update. Right now, they're concerned about a UCL injury.
Yep.
And there's a good reason why. I want to show you guys the clip that it looks like Josh Allen did get hurt on. This is late in the fourth quarter here. Watch this.
Ooh.
That's kind of a weird look. There's going to be weird pressure on that arm as soon as that guy comes in there.
That's
and you're starting to go forward.
Hit like that. Ow.
Not great. But then I think more importantly, the very next, and he was holding his elbow a little bit. I noticed when I was watching the game, he was holding his elbow a little bit after this. This was the next play, which now it looks very telling, but this is not a Josh Allen type of throw. Watch this play right here. Has time to step into this throw. Comes up really short.
Yeah.
Which I didn't think anything of it when that happened in the game. But now that we're talking about potential ligament injury, now that we're talking about this for Josh Allen, that could be bad news. Now they're still doing tests and they still don't know. But what's your outlook for the Bills if Josh Allen can't go, Robert?
I think that that they would definitely be in trouble. I mean, the backups are decent, but Allen was playing at a unique level, especially this year. I mean, at times last year, but it was a little bit erratic. As you note that, they lost to the terrible Jaguars last year. This year they lose to the Jets. And offensive implosions were the common denominator in those games. But otherwise, he, the best offense in the league this year, putting up crazy offensive stats. Last year, they benefited from a weak schedule, and their defense actually helped pad a lot of their numbers. This year, it's just been, extraordinary offensive ability. I'd always been concerned with Allen's injury risk, but I thought it would come from running because he runs so much and he runs kind of recklessly and carelessly. Those guys just tend to get hurt at some point in the league. Above average injury rate compared to quarterbacks on average. I wouldn't expect it to be this kind of fluky kind of thing. But it would be major trouble for the Bills if Allen can't go.
Yeah, and when you look at the backup situation, there you got Case Keenum, who can win a game or two for you. Case Keenum can hold the line if he needs to for 2 games. You're not going to win a Super Bowl with Case Keenum. What do you think, Beardo?
Yeah, and I kind of forgot Case Keenum was there. I actually kind of thought that their backup was still Matt Barkley, but you're right, Case Keenum is there. And, going down the stretch, if it's a few weeks, if Allen is out, if it's 2 weeks or a week or 2 weeks, you might be able to get by depending on who the Bills play. But if this is a season ender, if this is something that they say, hey, you know what, if you want to have a long, healthy career, you need to sit this rest of the season out, especially if there's going to be surgery involved, then you can call it good night for this season. But yeah, it sucks. They're another team that just made a big deal at the trade deadline to trade for the Colts running back Hines. So they expect to win this season. This is their season. Going into the season, they were the best team in the AFC. We all predicted them to be better than the Chiefs. And it really did look like in the AFC, this was their chance. And if Josh Allen goes down for the season, I think the Bills season is over.
And not only this season, if this is a UCL injury that cannot be, helped by, sitting out a month or whatever, and they actually do need to go Tommy John, as we know, that could be more than just this season.
Yeah, he'll probably sit out all of next season too. It'll be until the 2020-24 season where we see him.
Potentially, obviously people have different recovery times. We never expected, Adrian Peterson to come back as quick as he did from his ACL tear. May have been more than just a healthy body involved in that recovery, just a guess. But either way, if you're a Buffalo Bills fan, you need to be in panic mode right now and praying for good news coming out for Josh Allen in the next couple days. I did want to go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to make a comparison. I mean, I know Ben Roethlisberger was towards the end of his career. He was a lot older, so the recovery time is probably a little bit longer. But he is a quarterback that had recently gone through a Tommy John surgery. And then that season after he had that Tommy John surgery, he did not. His throwing power was just a noodle arm. He did not look good. Then he played one more season after that, a little bit better, but then, he was at the tail end of his career and he retired after that. That is the most recent case that we have to compare to Tommy John injury and recovery for a quarterback in the NFL, but yeah, it was Roethlisberger towards the end of his career. Josh Allen, a much younger body, healthier body. So if that is the worst case scenario, it'll be tough for the Bills going forward.
It'll prove God hates Buffalo.
Yes, as if anyone needed any proof. We do have a couple super chats I want to hit because one's very relevant. Chris Curran for $2, who I was supposed to go to the Tampa Bay game with yesterday. I couldn't because something came up, had to go to the other side of Florida. But he saw an incredible finish, says, let's fucking go. Man, what an impossible ending. GOAT. We got to talk about Tom Brady. Despite all the problems the Buccaneers have had this year, despite all the off-field stuff, Tom Brady going through a divorce with Giselle, everything was right. We were all right with what we were talking about. They made it official. They did make it public that they're going through a divorce, and Tom Brady needed a win. He got one in spectacular fashion. A pretty appropriate way to end that game, a game where Tom Brady, it's not his fault. Like what's going on with Tampa Bay is not Tom Brady's fault. Has he played perfect? Absolutely not. But he's putting the ball in these guys' numbers. He's putting it in their hands. I think he had 6 or 7 drops last night alone, including Scotty Miller. A big one hit him in the fucking face in the end zone. Couldn't come down with it, but it didn't matter. You give Tom Brady the ball with 45 seconds left, no timeouts on the 40-yard line. He marched down the field, scored a touchdown with 9 seconds left, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are now tops of the NFC South in position for the playoffs. Robert, what a fucking incredible game. What's your takeaway?
Well, the fact that they have a losing record and they're just in the right division, because you look at teams with a losing record. I mean, Denver, Las Vegas, Arizona, Green Bay, the Rams, and Tampa. And what do those teams have in common? They were 6 of the top 10 teams to win the Super Bowl preseason. So, I mean, it's extraordinary. But they're in the NFC South thanks to that's with the Carolina Panthers and everybody else. They're actually at top of the division. Right now, they would host Dallas in the playoffs. There would be a rematch of the first game of the year. Brady looks fine by everything I can see. They have the worst running game in the entire NFL. And how their game, I mean, on average, they don't make it. Their running backs, on average, don't make it a single yard before they have contact, which means the interior of their offensive line has had issues. The tackles have played very well in pass protection, but the interior of the offensive line has had major issues.
That left guard position has been
getting
fucking horrendous for them.
And the problem for that long term is Brady's one vulnerability is if you could get pressure on him, and especially if you can get pressure on him up
in
the
middle.
In between the tackles. So if he faces those kind of teams, the Rams gave him enough trouble, that's going to be continuous trouble. So the credit, I mean, Brady's still Brady. He's still going to be Brady. He's still right now they're 20-1 Super Bowl odds. I think those are good odds because it's still Tom Brady. It's, they have a weak division, so they're going to get in the playoffs, probably get at least one home field game, etc. I like those odds, and usually teams like this don't stay bad at something like that an entire season. If they go half a season and they're terrible in the pass defense or terrible at running the ball or terrible at one position, this is a professional league. They find some way to fix that at some level more often than not. Not always, but more often than not. And so, a lot of people will bet on that the first half of a season is going to be what the second half of a season is. Typically, the only thing that's consistent in the NFL is quarterback play. Everything else can go up and down at various junctures depending on where you're at. So they still have they're probably the greatest of all time. So I think it was an impressive comeback, 40 seconds left. The other thing that stood out to me is how bad the Rams are. You couldn't even get a first down. I mean, now Cooper Kupp probably shouldn't have worried about going out of bounds. He probably should have run up, and he probably would have got the first down. Then there is no Tom Brady comeback. But, I mean, the Rams are the second, by a lot of statistical metrics, the second worst offense in the NFL. And we talked about this early. So this is a red flag. There's problems. They haven't fixed it. They're still the second worst offense in the NFL by many metrics. This is the defending Super Bowl champs. I mean, Stafford's putting up one of his worst seasons ever. I mean, worse than any Detroit down season he had. So I think that was the other takeaway I took away is Brady still got it, and the Rams aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah, Robert pretty much summed it up. I mean, and you see a lot of these starts of the seasons that Brady has had similar to this in New England, and then they always come out at the end, whether most of the time, because they were playing in the NFC East, and the NFC East was so bad when Brady was playing there in his prime, that they would still tough it out and they would win the division and go on a run. And similar situation that you see this season, I can totally see that happening with this Tampa Bay team. And yes, obviously it helps when you have Tom Brady as your quarterback. One thing that I did notice that I saw, this referee team that umpired this game yesterday was the same team that umpired the Carolina Panthers and Atlanta Falcons game where DJ Moore ripped off his helmet, threw it away, and then that was that penalty that backed up. Well, Jalen Ramsey on the last drive took off his helmet in frustration, and there was no flag. So they were so eager to throw that flag last week, and it was the right decision because that is the rule. They threw the flag on DJ Moore, backed him up, missed the field goal. Well, yesterday Jalen Ramsey did the same thing at the end of the game, and there was a no flag. Same team, though. So there is some controversy right there. I just thought that was a little fun fact I saw today, but that was interesting. But, yeah, I like to see where Brady goes. I don't want to, say that Brady's back right now after, he just got a divorce and they had a nice comeback. But, Good win for Brady for his confidence to get that confidence back.
And you could tell he was relieved by it.
Oh yeah.
That press conference, he came out that he looks healthier. Like he legitimately looks healthier.
His face looks
just
fuller
coming out there. And
might have been the first time he got certain benefits in a while.
Maybe. But I will say, it's a tough thing to do to ask your 45-year-old quarterback to throw the ball 50 times a game.
Yes, and that's not a recipe. They've got to improve that running game. They have got to improve. They are not going to win a Super, and they've got to improve the interior of the offensive line because Brady will hit somebody in the playoffs that schemes well and just blitzes up the middle and causes pressure up the middle. And if they can't run it to do anything, that's not a recipe to win.
Yeah, and the defense now, the Tampa Bay defense held their own in this game, but I think that's in large part, like you said, Robert, because Matthew Stafford's having a very bad season, and the Rams can't run the ball. They simply do not have a run game. I haven't looked at the stats. I imagine that they're right with Tampa in terms of the worst rushing teams in the league. That's been something the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been fucking horrible at this year. Much different than the past couple of years that we've seen with those Buccaneers teams. So even though this is a rematch of that playoff matchup that we saw last year, it did not look like the same two teams, certainly.
No. It was a great ending. It wasn't really a great game.
It was a horrendous game. But that ending was what everybody wanted to see and what everybody was talking about. Gerald Armstrong for 2 got a French exam at 8. Wish me luck. Good luck. I wish I knew how to say that in French, but good luck. It's Chewy for 5. November 5th will be known for 2 things. LSU shocking Alabama at home and the Astros winning a second World Series. Fuck the haters. We will be talking about that Bama LSU game. Don't you worry. But we still do have a couple things we want to catch up on a little bit here when it comes to the NFL. Now, that Sunday night game was another game that was a little less entertaining than people thought. Now, the Tennessee Titans did play it very close to the vest. They wanted people to think Ryan Tannehill was going to play in this game. Until they had to reveal that no, Malik Willis is the quarterback, and man, is he limited. Limited.
They almost won that game. I mean,
exactly.
Like the two things competing against each other was, if you're a bettor, Andy Reid has a ridiculous record off a bye. He came into this 24-1 off a bye. I mean, it's like the kind of thing that if you're a gambler terrifies you to bet against. But the flip side is the Titans have had his number. I mean, I think they've covered 5 of the last 6, upset him frequently. And for them to almost pull the upset with Malik Willis, who can't throw the ball but, 5 times a game, and just Derrick Henry being back to being monster Derrick Henry, I don't understand how these defense – I get the Texans getting surprised by it. I was surprised, though, that the Chiefs – I was like, maybe because it was Tannehill, but it's like, it's Malik Willis. All they're going to do is run the ball. Just, stuff the run. You don't have to worry about covering deep. And yet they didn't for the first half. And then the defense schemed really well against Mahomes. They gave him a lot of trouble, like what we saw early last year at times. And so it'll be interesting how much defenses replicate that. I mean, I'll give the Titans head coach credit. He's the closest to Belichick off the Belichick tree at replicating some of those events. Because this Titans team, I mean, right now they would host the Jets in the playoffs, which is crazy to me, the Titans and the Jets. But I mean, and that's with Tannehill not having a good year, out at different points, lost A.J. Brown. The rookie they bring in gets hurt and is out. This is a Titans team that shouldn't have been the AFC number one last year by talent and performance, and yet were, because this coach just out coaches his opponents on a regular basis. And when you do that to Andy Reid, that's darn impressive. So I was impressed by that aspect. But by golly, for all the critics of Tannehill, you need Tannehill back because Malik Willis can't throw the ball. This guy, to say this guy's a project is an understatement. He was always a reach. When he was at Liberty, he was fun to watch, but I looked at him and was like, this is not an NFL guy. Maybe 4 or 5 year project, maybe. But you can see that they're scared to let him just drop back and throw. And often he took dumb sacks when he did. So
he's scared too as well.
Yeah,
That was a problem in preseason. Vrabel benched his ass because he refused to throw the ball when they were calling passing plays. He kept just taking off and running because it's all he can do. That's not that's not a, hey, let's sit him behind a guy for a year. No, this is a dude who has almost no chance of playing quarterback long-term in the NFL, even as a backup.
Correct. He's really, maybe he works as a transition to a wide receiver, great athlete, maybe. I do not see him as even a backup quarterback in the league. But credit to the Titans, they managed to cover 2 games and almost win 2, including steal one as a 14-point underdog in Kansas City. So that was wild. But they definitely need Tannehill back to have any semblance of a passing game. But credit to Derrick Henry, he was back to being Derrick Henry, running over people, running by people. That was old school Derrick Henry we saw.
Oh, 100%. And what did you think about the Chiefs, struggling but eventually able to pull this off, Beardo?
Yeah, just more so. I never understood the whole Willis pick in the first place. Tannehill, this is a guy you brought in because Mariota wasn't exactly paying off, wasn't the guy that you thought he was going to be at the number 2 overall pick. So you bring in Tannehill, and then Tannehill is the guy. And then just last playoffs in the postseason, when he threw that devastating interception against to the Bengals, and that just ended their season. I never understood bringing Willis in. Like, clearly Tannehill is your guy. You got to ride with him. And then trading A.J. Brown. I don't think that the Titans thought that they were going to be 5-2 yesterday. I didn't think that they were going to be 5-2 after they losing to the Giants week 1 and then having lost A.J. Brown. And yeah, I mean, it's just good for the Chiefs, I guess. Good for the Chiefs. I mean, maybe it's the Dak Prescott effect as reference to why Dak Prescott's rookie year, he was just absolutely explosive, and we haven't quite seen the same. A lot of these, there's not enough NFL film on these guys. And Willis, maybe they're not sure what Willis was going to do, what kind of the game plan that Vrabel had, because Vrabel is such a versatile coach and what he can do to confuse these defenses, to confuse the opposing coaching staff. So, but yeah, Willis clearly not ready to be a starter by any stretch. This is like the Love in Green Bay situation here. Just not ready.
Exactly. For people asking, how does he compare to Geno Smith? Geno Smith was a great passer in college at West Virginia. So Geno was always someone that you thought could at least be a backup quarterback in the NFL, and I thought he would be a solid backup, and you put him in the right system, probably could do well, and that's what's the reality for Seattle now.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll maintain. I have doubt. Like when I was looking at some teams that I thought might drop off from where they're currently at, and teams that might surge. The team, like right now in the AFC, you'd have the Bills, the Chiefs, the Chargers, the Ravens, the Dolphins, Titans, and the Jets in the playoffs. I have doubts the Titans and Jets are going to end up in the playoffs. In the NFC, you have the Eagles, Vikings, 49ers, Seattle, Giants, Tampa, and Dallas. I have doubts as to whether Seattle and the Giants ultimately make it. My doubts about Seattle are that if you look at Geno, right now he's had 5 good games and 4 average games, mediocre games. And his 5 good games have been good enough that it clouds the stats. But a really good, consistent quarterback and a good system, that number will be more like 6-3, 7-2, that kind of number by this point. They're not 50-50 as to whether they're going to be good. So I think Geno's done great in this new system, but I think defenses will start to figure it out, and Geno will return to being a solid, but not, he's not going to be a top 5 fantasy performer, I don't think, by season's end. I don't think the offense is going to be a 24, 25 point a game kind of machine like it's been so far. Now, I bet against them last week, with Arizona, and Arizona tanked again. Even with DeAndre Hopkins back. So I could be wrong, but he's one I think is solid. But we have a long history in the NFL. These guys going on and average guys playing well for a little bit. It's very rare they maintain it over a whole season, least of all back-to-back seasons. So, but maybe so. I mean, he never. They've got a system. I mean, the commentators were mentioning it during the Arizona game. They're like, they keep running the same play, and the guy's wide open. Anybody could hit this guy. And Arizona missed it 6 times. They just couldn't figure. But defenses in the NFL, given everybody's getting paid 7 figures, they're probably going to figure that out sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and I think you also have to, because I think Geno Smith, when he was with the Jets, that was the Rex Ryan coach Jets, I believe, at least when he first got there. It's not like the Mark Sanchez days or anything was necessarily anything to write home about offensively. They did go to the AFC Championship 2 years.
Combination that defense was amazing too.
Exactly.
Absolutely, that was classic Rex. That was peak Ryan. Those teams that because those teams
whether
had
Buddy
no
or Rex,
getting anywhere near where they got in the playoffs.
100%.
What is I'm curious because I saw that Cliff Kingsbury, he's like his record at home in his career as the Arizona Cardinals head coach is 10-19. What is his leash as Arizona's head coach, Robert?
The other thing with Click is his MO was early good starts and then fading in the second half of the season. Not supposed to be fading after the first half of the season. And there was optimism. I in fact had it once DeAndre Hopkins was back because with Hopkins back-to-back weeks, Kyler Murray was putting up good numbers. And then they put up like 5.5 yards a pass last week. That's not good at home against a team they had double revenge against. I mean, that was not a good performance. So I think he needs to get Arizona into the playoffs, or I think he's gone at the season's end. That's my prediction.
And
they've
Kyler
given him
Murray.
everything he wanted. I mean, player after player after player. They gave Murray the big contract that was at his. He could have said, "Hold on, I'm not really sure about Murray. Let's see if we go another direction." He didn't. He went. He stuck with it. This is very much his recipe. And this was a guy who had a losing record, I think, as a college football head coach. So he was always kind of a little odd. I thought he had a creative offensive mind, but I didn't think he was ready to be an NFL head coach.
Yep. And I'm seeing it in the chat, and I was just going to say it before I saw it in the chat, too. Since the new Call of Duty came out, Kyler Murray is 0-2.
Yeah.
But
it's not
I will say,
to be fair, they're 3-6 on the season, too.
Well, and on the fantasy level, I think he's still in the top 10. It's because he runs around and the rest, but I'm always curious where if you're big into fantasy, how you perceive a quarterback versus how you are if you're betting on him or you're watching the games, you're not doing. Because it creates
it's way different. Like it's
completely.
But you can still know like that a dude's like, I don't want this dude running my like. Jalen Hurts was that way for a long time. Now we got to talk about the Eagles because they're fucking undefeated somehow, and Jalen Hurts is playing incredible, not turning the ball over, making very good decisions. The
Number
Eagles
2 offense in the league right behind the Bills. I mean,
the Eagles look really good right now.
Yeah.
But Jalen Hurts up until this year, was that dude who's like, all right, top 10 fantasy guy, but I don't want him on my team. Like fantasy and reality are very different things when it comes to quarterbacks and running the football. We saw that with Justin Fields. But those Eagles, man, they look great.
One thing to watch is a weak link for them occasionally, sporadically this year has been the run defense. Jordan Davis, the great Georgia player, that defensive tackle, had been playing lights out for them, but apparently he's on the IR, or he's going to be here. He's on the injury list. So that'll be something to watch a little bit with the Eagles, but that they're not one of the teams. I think they'll come back a little bit down to earth. I don't think they'll maintain, elite offensive performance. They might.
You don't think they're going to go 19-0, Robert?
No. Yeah. I think there'll be some slip ups along the way. That will get them. I mean, the Texans actually gave them a little bit of a fight last week. So but I mean, they just got that offense clicking with Hurts, and it's working at such a level, and the defense is smartly coached and has enough talent. AJ Brown, obviously a great move by them. I mean, that was the question. I mean, it's like the Dolphins. I mean, Waddle and Hill may put up the best combo stats in the history of the NFL at the wide receiver position if it keeps exploding the way they're exploding on any given Sunday. And that even though it didn't hurt Kansas City that much, I think it did hurt the Titans. It has been impressive watching these wide receivers go to a place where there was not a proven quarterback, and all of a sudden that quarterback looks like he's a proven quarterback in both Tua and Hurts.
Well, for Miami, and we could talk about that game a little bit with my Bears, from Miami's defense looks a little porous against Justin Fields. But like what Miami is able to do with arguably the two fastest guys at the wide receiver position on either side of the field, they expand that defense so much that it leaves so much vulnerable in the middle of the field. And they can really start to get that run game going as well with the addition of Wilson and that the Mostert combo that they have now. Because if you can get past that first level, that second level of those linebackers, it's expanded. Like having that speed is a game changer. It makes a lot of Tua throws easy for him, which is a good thing. And it was genius to put those guys in the same field.
The Eagles, the Bills, and the Dolphins, like the 49ers before them, are a strong testament to these new analytics-driven offensive coaches who are changing the script. Because because all those quarterbacks are quarterbacks at certain levels. I mean, people have doubts about Jimmy G, doubts about Tua, doubts about Hurts, and a lot of people had doubts before coming into the NFL for Josh Allen. And all of those guys, I mean, right now you're talking about 1, 2, 3, and 4, arguably in the NFL in terms of offensive performance. San Francisco's right up there with them with Jimmy G at the helm. So, I mean, way above Aaron Rodgers, above Tom Brady, above some of these legends. And so I think that's a great credit to these new coaches that have embraced analytics and how they can be offensively creative in the league at redefining it. It's a lot better than the experiment that Bill Belichick's done because he's managed to pull off another win, but their offense has been abominable in the last 2 weeks. 3.9 net yards per passing play under Mac Jones in the last 2 weeks in these wins. His hybrid experiment of let's take a couple of guys who've never done offense and make them offensive coordinator. Maybe not so good. Yeah. But at least he's not blowing games like the Josh McDaniels is with the Ravens, who managed to set a record, I believe, with 3 losses this year after leading by 17 or more.
Yep. And also, just real quick before we leave the Eagles, also Miles Sanders running like he has something to prove. Miles Sanders has been awesome for the Eagles this season, especially on Thursday night against Houston. He was bowling people over. It was fun to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And someone brought up Tyreek Hill and what a crazy season he's having. He's on pace for 2,000 yards. And yeah, Tyreek Hill has 1,100 yards receiving. Justin Fields has 1,300 yards passing so far this season. Like, to put that in perspective. And you got to give it up to Justin Fields. He ran all over the field. He threw for 3 touchdowns. I don't know how you throw for 3 touchdowns and only 130 yards, but he did it. And, you know, that receiving core needs help as well. I've said multiple times, I'm not a believer in Justin Fields long-term. I don't think that that's a way to win football games long-term, sustainable, the way that he plays, the way that they're having him play. But, you know, on that 4th and 10, I mean, he put a ball in the guy's hands and he dropped it. He put a ball right in St. Brown's hands and he dropped it. So you can't put that on Justin Fields for sure.
Of these 4 AFC teams that are outside the playoffs, do you think any of them make the playoffs? New England, Cincinnati, Denver, and Jacksonville.
I think Cincinnati's got the best shot, right?
Yeah, at least by the way they played against Carolina last week. Burrow. I mean, that offense has started to click. It was struggled early, and it's even without great Jamar Chase. They were able to actually put up good stats. I mean, I think anybody who had Dixon must have gone nuts last week in the fantasy. Didn't he run for 3 touchdowns, catch another touchdown? I mean,
he had 4 touchdowns in the first half.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Jacksonville maybe has an out. New England always because it's Belichick, but he's got to fix that offense because he can't keep expecting to win, putting up less than 4 yards per passing play without wind being a factor. I would never bet against him. Denver, obviously, I just don't think they're going to turn it around. When you're shipping Chubb off, you're no longer serious about performing this season. You've already given up, which is incredible. But the Jags are one of those teams been a little bit unlucky, and if they get the right rhythm and the right role, that they could be decent. It was interesting they traded for Calvin Ridley. It showed how much they were future oriented.
Mm-hmm.
That
was another
in terms of that.
I can't even talk to him right now.
Yeah. Exactly. And on the NFC side, the teams that are right outside the playoffs, Atlanta, the Rams, Saints, Packers, Arizona, and Arizona. I'm not sure any of those. Atlanta had some bad breaks. They need A.J. Terrell. A.J. Terrell went from the number 2 rated quarterback at Pro Football Focus last season to the number 86 rated cornerback this year.
Wow.
That's why their pass defense has been so atrocious. They traded from the Texans to complement that because he has some injury issues too. But if he can get back to at least being decent, that offense is starting to click. Kyle Pitts, they just missed on a couple of big passing plays to Pitts last week. A little bit unlucky. Well, any play with Khalil Mack, you can never say is just about luck. Him ripping that ball away off from Drake.
Khalil Mack's a fucking monster.
He's beast.
The man is. But for that and a missed field goal, the Falcons probably win that game. I think
when you look at the Rams, though, you look at the Rams, what they were able to do last year, it hasn't clicked for sure. But it's hard to not look at them and give them a little bit of edge with McVay, with Cooper Kupp, with Aaron Donald, like with those players on defense. Like that's the team I would look at to make a run and figure that out. I did want to talk real quick about Cincinnati again. I think that this week they're playing Carolina. It's Carolina, although Tampa Bay did lose to them recently. But I think hopefully they realize the key to their success, especially with Jamar Chase out. You have Joe Mixon. Run the damn ball. Run the ball more. Make it easier on Joe Burrow. Make it so Joe Burrow's not throwing 45 times. Make it so he's not having to sit back there and take all these sacks. Fucking run the ball. You got talented running backs between him and P. Ryan. So do a little bit more of that, Zach Taylor. And I think the Cincinnati Bengals will be in the playoffs.
And I think one of the teams that's currently in the playoffs, the two that I think have the biggest chance to drop out of the playoffs. One is Seattle, but that's going to depend on Geno Smith. But the other is Beardo's Giants. But do you think the Giants will still make the playoffs? I mean, right now they're scheduled to be there.
Well, yeah. To answer your question for the whole the NFC playoff picture is the Cowboys and the Giants being a wild card because the Eagles are undefeated. Those two teams would be the first seed in the South and possibly in the West if Seattle doesn't take care of business in the second half of the season. So I think the fact that this NFC East, just with the Eagles and the Giants and the Cowboys all having above 6 wins, it makes the rest of the teams trying to get a wild card spot very difficult.
Yeah, it does. I agree with that.
And you're going to see a team probably in the South. I mean, we've seen it before in the AFC West with a team with a losing record win the division and having to host a playoff game. I think we saw the Seahawks host the Saints a few years ago, and actually the Seahawks with a losing record actually beat the Saints. I think that was the Beastquake, right? Beastquake 2.0.
That was Marshawn Lynch.
Yeah. So yeah, it's tough. It's very tough with the Giants and the Cowboys being that good with those records for anybody else to think about the wild card.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's why I like the Falcons, just because they're in the NFC South. If they were to sneak up, they're I think only one. I think they're actually tied, but just behind in the tiebreaker with Tampa currently. So
they're both 4 and 5.
It's still weird to think of the Falcons overcoming Tampa. And it'll be interesting. Jameson Williams is supposed to be back in a couple of weeks. That'll be interesting to see. Deshaun Watson is supposed to be back in a couple of weeks, so we'll see if that turns on the spigot for. I mean. Cleveland's still in it. That was their goal, was to be around the playoffs by the time he comes back. It looks like they'll be, a game or two out. They won't be too far out of the playoff hunt when Deshaun Watson comes back. So we'll see what that looks like when he does.
And Atlanta just got Cordell Patterson back just this weekend. And
he was playing hard, man. You saw him run over that linebacker for the Chargers and then tell him about it later.
Yeah, he's their best offensive player, and he's just only going to keep getting better. As long as he stays healthy, then Atlanta does have a chance of winning the South.
Well, you know what college he played for, right?
Tennessee.
I don't. Tennessee, I'm guessing.
Tennessee Volunteers. Who, yes, I predicted what Georgia was a bad matchup for us in between the hedges. But with Bama going down and Clemson going down, we still have a great shot at making the playoffs, which is incredible in the second year of Josh Heupel.
Yeah, 100%. I think that once you saw how Georgia handled them, and I think the game was further away than the score was. Georgia outclassed
bad
them.
Matchup for Tennessee because they tackle so well. They're defensively disciplined. They're not like Alabama. You're not going to get them out of position. The rain probably didn't help so much. Helped Georgia a little more than it helped Tennessee in the second half there. And Georgia's been putting up big stats. People had just quietly, they haven't noticed it. Georgia's in the top 2 offensively in almost every single metric. Now, it's mostly tight ends, not wide receivers, but they've got they've got the best tight end maybe ever in the history of college football. You got 3 guys in the tight ends that are all considered NFL starters. I mean, their third guy was the number 1 tight end coming out of high school. People haven't even seen him that much. The transfer, Eric Gilbert from LSU. So that's just a really stacked, disciplined team that you got to catch at the right time and the right moment to beat. But I think if it's Ohio State and Michigan loses, I don't think Michigan gets in over Tennessee. Let's assume Georgia wins the SEC. I think it doesn't matter who wins. Even if an SEC West team win in and upset Georgia, it's not going to matter. It's a 2-loss team. They're not getting into the playoff. So so I think it's Georgia and Tennessee out of the SEC. The only way Tennessee doesn't get there is if TCU runs the table. If TCU runs the table, then I think it ends up being Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, and then Tennessee's kind of on the edge as to whether they make it or not. But I think you'll probably have a Georgia-Tennessee rematch in the college football playoff with where things are currently looking to be, because Georgia's got a very soft regular season schedule the rest of the way. So does Tennessee. Tennessee's playing Vandy, Missouri, and South Carolina. It'd take a massive upset for them to lose any of those games. And
that's always the question: is how did they want to set it up? Are they going to want to set it up, even if it is 1-4? Are they going to want to set it up that way? Are they going to want 2 SEC teams facing off right away? Or are they going to want to maybe just manipulate a little bit, have TCU play Georgia, have Tennessee play Ohio State to potentially get that SEC matchup?
Tennessee-Ohio State would be a lot of fun. That game would be like 52-49. That'd be like the Tennessee-Alabama game. That game would be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That would be a lot of fun to watch. If they care about the ratings, which they should, good teams win, great teams cover. Smart marketing teams commissioners make the right alignment, then that would be a lot more fun. So where is the current? Have they? Oh, that probably doesn't come out till tomorrow. The next.
Yeah, it may come out either tonight or tomorrow. I don't quite remember, but obviously there's going to be a big shakeup to these rankings for the college football playoff. The fact that Tennessee was up here to begin with, I think maybe some people were questioning. I think they did this with the assumption that they knew Georgia would beat them, so they wouldn't have to drop them big time, because that's how these fucking games are played. But Tennessee loses to Georgia. Ohio State doesn't look good, but they did win against Northwestern.
And it was Clemson, like 42-mile-per-hour winds. That people were wondering why he put up like 80 passing yards. That's why.
Now, Clemson got fucking annihilated by a very good Notre Dame team. That was embarrassing for them.
Embarrassing. I mean, the two things that got exposed is for the last couple of years, I've had doubts about Clemson. Because, in Trevor Lawrence's last year, the offense was good, but it wasn't elite. I was like, that makes no sense. You have the number 1 quarterback in the country, and you can't put up an elite offense playing mostly a weak ACC. So it just caught up with them. I mean, their offense just got exposed by, as you noted, a mediocre Notre Dame team. And Notre Dame could run right on them, which was incredible. And then Alabama, we talked about at the beginning of the year that Alabama's coordinators had underperformed, both of these coordinators. Bill O'Brien, I mean, we saw him in the NFL. It's like, why exactly does everybody think Bill O'Brien's going to be like Steve Sarkisian at Alabama? Well, he's not. And they saw that again. I mean, almost every road game for 2 seasons, they've been bad. They should have lost to Florida last year, should have lost to Auburn last year, did lose to A&M last year, lost to Tennessee this year, probably should have lost to Texas this year, did lose to LSU this year. You're hearing a lot of grumbling in Alabama about Nick Saban, which is pretty rare. I think Saban is going to can both of his coordinators at the end of the year and bring in much better coordinators, and Alabama will be back to the top 3 program they should be, because they have the talent level to do that for many years to come. But I think Alabama's playoff hopes are dead.
The thing is, to play, a little. I'm not an Alabama fan. Usually, I say anti-Alabama things that piss Jeremy off. But from the Alabama perspective, of course, there's going to be a lot of fucking noise. Nick Saban doesn't lose 2 games in a season. That doesn't fucking happen in Nick Saban era. But you look at the 2 games they've lost, and you have a missed field goal in the Tennessee game, and then a fucking partially blocked field goal that still goes in for Tennessee to finish that game, and then you have at LSU in Death Valley, Brian Kelly pulls his nuts out and goes for 2 in overtime to beat you. After Bryce Young did everything he did that he needed to do to get back in that game and to tie that up. So you have 2 losses that are on the road that are very by the skin of your teeth. You're losing these games. I still think Alabama's the second best team in the country. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just think they have no shot at the now. This is where Alabama would be a lot of fun in the extended playoff. Right? You have
Yes.
12 games in the playoffs. That's where they'd be a very dangerous team. They'd be a live dog. But like you look at where the playoff ratings are going to, I think they'll put Georgia 1, Ohio State 2, Michigan 3, and TCU 4. But you look at, you assume Ohio. The reason why I think Tennessee will probably be 5 or maybe 6, probably 5. The Tennessee's advantage is if whoever loses the Ohio State Michigan game, Tennessee's probably going to leapfrog come playoff time, as long as they run the table.
And to me, that's the only thing that makes sense is that ranking. And you know they're going to put Tennessee just on the outside because one of those teams is guaranteed to lose.
I'll be shocked if TCU's in the playoffs. Well, I mean, what at Sonny Dykes? Now, partially that's because the Big 12 is down this year. Iowa State is down. Other teams are down. Now, has TCU played Texas yet?
That's the next game. This is their last. Now, obviously, Baylor isn't a walk in the park.
No, that's true. They could definitely get upset there.
Yeah, they don't have it easy, but I would put odds on TCU finishing undefeated if I were a betting man right now. But
because they're on the road to Texas and then on the road. Is that right? And then on the road to
Texas,
Baylor,
at Baylor, and then at
they'll
home
drop
to finish
one
up
of those
against
two,
Iowa
so
State.
they'll be out. So then the question is, who makes it? Who's that? Maybe Michigan gets to actually still make it, even if they lose to Ohio. I think they put a one-loss Michigan team over a one-loss Pac-12 champion, whether that's Oregon or USC or UCLA. To the Greg's question about UCLA still has it, but maybe not. Maybe they elevate, the one of the to-be Big Ten teams, USC or UCLA, over them. UCLA's in a great position to UCLA, USC, and Oregon all have a great shot at the playoff if they run the table and win the Pac-12 title, especially since TCU is likely to lose because they could be that fourth team in. And you're right, that'd be a perfect, you put Georgia up against the Pac-12 champion, you put Ohio State against Tennessee, the big offenses. That's perfect marketing ratings for the commissioners, which they pretend not to care about.
And the idea of having a Pac-12 team, I'm sure would be interesting to them. If they could find a way to get USC in there, I'm sure they'd love to.
They'd absolutely love USC. That would be their favorite. They would like, probably because Oregon, that beatdown they took from Georgia is kind of, spoiled the national impression of them. And because the Pac-12 plays in the Pac-12, almost nobody sees them all year because, unless you're up, past midnight or you live out west.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, as you're a USC fan, Beardo, what's the feeling? Do people feel like USC has an outside shot at it, or what?
Unless we win out, I don't think there's much faith that the fact this season just being first year of Lincoln Riley's tenure there, I don't think there's much hope for the playoffs this year. For next year, that's a completely different story. But I don't think I don't think there's too much faith that we make the playoffs this year.
That USC UCLA game might be for all the marbles, or I guess, or at least to play into the Pac-12 championship game. The thing is, but that might be a fun game for the first time in like a decade, right?
And Caleb Williams isn't playing that well either. Their offense is all right, but they just, I think we had something like a 20-point lead, and we only won by a touchdown on Saturday. So the defense is not as good as the offense is.
And I think when you look at these teams, when you look at what Oregon's done, the only loss Oregon has on the season was that opener against Georgia. Now they got fucking obliterated,
blown out.
That's the only loss, the opener against Georgia. And
does Oregon look at their USC or no?
What's that?
Does Oregon play USC this year, or is that only in the Pac-12 title game potentially?
Only in the title game, because right now and they have a couple very quality opponents to finish out too. They got Washington, whatever, but they got Utah and Oregon State, both ranked teams right now.
They're going to lose one of those.
They potentially could. Whereas UCLA and USC will play each other. Two top 10 teams, probably will play each other, the second to last game of the season. So I think there's some opportunities for sure, and I do think. It's going to be tough. Who's Tennessee's opponents coming up to the end of the season?
South Carolina, Vandy, and Missouri. So there's so many.
They got such a fucking easy. Oh my gosh.
No, it will be double-digit favorites in all of those. There's always a possibility of a crazy upset. It won't be South Carolina or Vandy. If there's a crazy upset, Missouri. I get Missouri almost upset Georgia, but sorry, I just don't see. None of these teams can match up Tennessee's offense has killed everybody the last 2 seasons aside from Georgia. And that's because Georgia can match up. And Georgia has, once again, 9 of their 11 defensive players are going to play on Sunday. And Tennessee has good talent, but it relies on scheme. It doesn't have elite talent. So when it goes up against the Georgias, it struggles. Now, Alabama's not disciplined enough, and that's how we torch them. But you have to have a combination of elite talent and disciplined defense to keep up with Tennessee. And Tennessee schemes very well defensively to mask some deficiencies in their back seven, good front four. Missouri's offense is abominable. So I just don't – they'll be big favorites in all three. That's why it's hard to see Tennessee being on the out, given where the other team schedules line up. The only question to me is who that fourth team is, given I think TCU will lose. Is it Michigan or is it a Pac-12 one-loss title champion?
I have a feeling that a lot will depend on how the Michigan-Ohio State game goes as well. If Ohio State wins by fucking 3 or 4 scores, it's not going to go well. But I would personally, even though I'm a Michigan fan, I'm a Big Ten guy, I would like to see if TCU does drop one, potentially one of those Pac-12 guys get in. And I think all of them you could make a case for if they, the one that does win out. I think you do have a case there for that person. And Oregon, especially, like, if Oregon is able to, because Oregon would face USC in the Pac-12 championship if they got that far, or UCLA, right? So that would mean you beat UCLA twice,
right?
Or you beat UCLA and USC and everybody else in the Pac-12.
Imagine if it's Chip Kelly back with UCLA in the playoffs. Now, I think that doesn't match up great against Georgia. It's another situation he relies a lot on scheme, and that Georgia's not the kind of Georgia's defense in the last 3 years has really only given up points to very talented offenses. Its offense at times has not shown up. That's been its vulnerability. Stetson Bennett, this year's put up great stats, but I think Georgia and Ohio State is the most logical national championship matchup at this point. But it would be interesting to see who those other teams are. I would probably cheer for Tennessee because they have a fun offense. I'm a Tennessee fan, but even if I wasn't, I would like Tennessee in the playoffs because they're a fun offense. And a Pac-12, one of the Pac-12 fun offenses, USC, UCLA, or Oregon. It'd be great fun to see USC back in there, and then Lincoln Riley back in the playoffs. That would be, and classic Lincoln Riley team, right? Great offense, weak defense. That's Lincoln Riley.
Yep.
I think it'd be exciting. Got to get those guys in the Pac-12 in there before they head to the Big Ten.
Yeah, exactly.
For sure. Real quick, Gabe Knight for 5. Kentucky and Bengals football have been massive disappointments this year. Watching this crap makes me want to put my foot through the TV.
Hey, you got basketball coming up. Kentucky's going to be good this year.
No, John Calipari is a scumbag. I hate him. And I love how good their recruiting classes are and what a big disappointment they always are because of the way that these one and dones are manipulated now. Nothing makes me happier than watching John Calipari Kentucky teams lose in the NCAA tournament. Guy who gets all the talent in the world. But I've always fucking hated John Calipari.
Well, speaking of college basketball, Tennessee upset Gonzaga right out of the gate. So I think that's the only big game it's played this year so far in college basketball. Then NBA's up and down. It's just wild. The Lakers suck. LeBron is bad.
Oh yes, I love that. He's not even playing tonight. He's got a foot injury or something. Probably his foot got injured when he put it in his mouth. When he was trying to talk about how, I was listening to Migos back in 2010. I knew those guys was going to be big. They actually didn't come out with their first song until 2011. But hey, what are you going to do, LeBron?
And then they're just, stepping on Kyrie Irving. It's fascinating. The NBA, that the San Antonio Spurs are getting sued for covering up actual sexual harassment by their players of their personnel, which is being completely suppressed by the media. But Kyrie Irving having, unusual political opinions is grounds to prevent him from playing for the Brooklyn Nets, who I guess just like to lose.
Yeah, the Kyrie stuff has been crazy to me. I don't like the shit that Kyrie's sharing in terms of like the Black Israelite stuff. That's been out there for a very long time. Yeah. And there's a lot of people in there's a lot of black people in the entertainment industry that have talked about that stuff before. Like, people have dumb opinions that I don't agree with all the fucking time. Whatever. Exactly. Who cares?
It's not like they were forcing people to take a dangerous drug that might kill their family member or their kid. right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's really the reason I think we're seeing that. But at the same time, it's impossible to separate the Kanye and the Kyrie stuff all
Yeah.
going on at the same time.
They're making examples of them. They're trying to. It's the whole fear mongering thing. They want you to
Oh,
step
yeah.
in line, and they don't want you to share your opinion about things that they disagree with. And what they're doing is that they're making examples of these people, of these celebrities or athletes, so that you, the little person, you definitely won't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And man, I've never seen anybody go through the ringer quite like they're trying to do with Kyrie right now.
Struggle session, a real live struggle session.
Yep.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyrie just walks away. I don't know if they're going to get him to do that. I think it was.
He's got tons of money. Yeah,
He's done it before.
He's got
walked
plenty of
away before.
FU money. He refused to get the vaccine. And
Yep.
He's like, okay, you can suspend me, whatever. I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do.
The only thing it's probably done is made a lot of people go buy it on Amazon to watch it.
Exactly.
At the end of the day,
exactly
like
right.
that's all that this has done. Somebody said Amazon making money off it. Yeah, they probably are. Probably a lot of people have searched that and want to see why someone is getting canceled so hard for something like that.
I always get a kick out of Nike making a big deal out of anything. You know, you got one of the biggest labor rights abusers in the entire globe lecturing anybody about anything. It's extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, Oregon football is only Oregon football because Phil Nike has poured a ridiculous amount of money into that school.
That's a fact.
Yeah, those uniforms. That was half the thing. Like just those uniforms were a great marketing tool for them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to read it from the Greg. I know we talked about it earlier, but friendly reminder: UCLA 8-1, number 9 in the country. DTR number 1 quarterback in the nation. Charbonnet number 1 running back in the nation. Make UCLA great again. Fired Chip Kelly. You still want him fired, even though they're doing well with the Greg. I love it.
You know, a long shot. I don't know what DTR is for the Heisman, but he probably would be if he were to run the table and beat USC and win the Pac-12 title and get into the playoffs. Yeah, he's a live shot at the Heisman because he's put up some nice numbers this year.
When I think and Bryce Young's done now.
I think
which
there
he
won't
was
be a
already
repeat of
outside
Bryce
shot,
Young.
back to backs. Always going to be
Hooker
fucking
still
tough,
has a chance, but the Georgia, he didn't put up enough stats. I mean, I thought he played really game against Georgia. I mean, he was taking some heavy hits and he was still running. He was doing what he could do. But he probably a bit of an outsider still because of the way the game went. If he had bigger numbers, it would have been a different kind of outcome. So yeah, I would look at some underdog bids out there for guys that are under the radar currently who might surprise people for the Heisman at this point. I mean, obviously the Ohio State guys, if he puts up big numbers against Michigan, he'll be the favorite. But a lot of the other guys, I think, are people should take a look at because they're probably live dogs if they're 10-1 or bigger.
Yeah, it's really wide open right now. It feels that way at least, and like with nobody, like who's the favorite? I could not tell you who my favorite would be to win.
Shroud's probably the favorite.
Yeah, Trout. He probably is as of this morning. After the it was Hooker, but now I think Shroud probably is the favorite. Though probably people looked at those stat sheet and they're like, "Whoa, we're getting
80 yards passing."
Yeah.
It's Chewy for 5. The Eagles are so great, but my concern is their run defense. That's alarming, and the remaining teams do have some aspects of running the ball.
They need Jordan Davis to get back and healthy.
For sure. And we did miss one NFL topic that we got to go back and talk about. The Indianapolis Colts, who made the decision 2 games ago to bench Matt Ryan, effectively ending Matt Ryan's career for all intents and purposes.
Yep.
They've made a head coaching change. Jim Irsay has seen enough. Frank Wright is out. Jeff Saturday comes from the chair at ESPN to be the interim head coach for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, to my knowledge, I don't think Jeff Saturday has any coaching experience other than maybe high school level. But all of a sudden he's the interim head coach. Now, of course, Jeff Saturday he's loved in Indianapolis. He was a kind of a coach on the field, at that center position for years with Peyton Manning, right alongside him in the Colts Ring of Honor. So if you're going to bring a guy in that, maybe has the backing of a lot of people there, maybe that's the right move. I'm shocked they brought Jeff Saturday in and not maybe promoted somebody else from within to interim head coach. But Beardo, you were talking about this before a little bit. What's your take on this whole move?
Very bizarre that they did not hire somebody that was already on the coaching staff to be the interim head coach. That they're bringing in an outsider. Well, yes, Jeff Saturday is a big football brain. He's a very smart guy, having been Peyton Manning's center for years, 14 or 15 years in Indianapolis. It was they had that whole bit of, Jeff's quick calling fucking plays. I'm the quarterback. I'm going to call the plays. And Jeff's like, well, let's run the damn ball. Jeff Saturday's smart. But from my knowledge, Frank Reich was calling the offensive plays. And you just went and fired your play caller and your head coach. And you're bringing in Jeff Saturday, like you said, Ryan, from the chair at ESPN. Somebody's going to have to call these plays. And I'm figuring that it is probably going to be Jeff Saturday. So Jeff Saturday in this week has a lot of work to do to learn the system and to be calling smart plays and be efficient. It is very bizarre, but I think that Jim Irsay is trying to tap in a little bit of that Peyton Manning energy, a little bit of that Peyton Manning big football brain energy, and try to I don't know what their plan is going forward with Jeff Saturday. I mean, it's bizarre to me, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm rooting for Jeff Saturday. I'm rooting for him to do well. I don't want to see him fail. I like Jeff Saturday. But it is very interesting for them to not promote somebody from within. But we will see.
If they wanted somebody fun and entertaining, they should have hired Pat McAfee. But this is a sign that Jim Irsay really runs the team.
Oh, yeah.
And he let Peyton Manning walk. Probably not the greatest decision of all time. Andrew Luck, he couldn't keep in the fold. Luck, bolts, and he hasn't had any success since then. And Reich is an offensive genius, well-regarded, well-respected. Granted, this season has underperformed, but who has he been given? He's been given, backup quarterback after backup quarterback after backup quarterback, old guys on their way out, and has usually put up surprising stats, whether it's Jacoby Brissett or Phillip Rivers in his last year. And people now recognize what he did with Wentz was actually kind of impressive, given Wentz's struggles in Washington. So Reich will find his way back into the NFL. I have no doubt about that. I think he's one of the great offensive minds. He used to be the greatest, one of the great answers to a trivia quiz. Who was the backup quarterback who led to one of the biggest upsets in college football, come from behind upsets, and one of the biggest come from behind wins in NFL playoffs. And it was both Frank Reich when he was at the University of Maryland and again with the Buffalo Bills. So he's really a creative. I've been very impressed with Reich. So this tells me Jim Irsay runs the show, and he's starting to look like the Cowboys did when you had an owner who didn't really know the sport run his team. How has that worked out for the Cowboys? I don't think it'll work out any better for the Colts.
I could really see. Sorry, Ryan. I could just really see Frank Reich probably join back up with Doug Peterson in Jacksonville, possibly after this season, and get the the brain going again. Just see until Frank Reich will obviously probably get another head coaching job, but that's I think the next spot where Frank Reich goes is down in Jacksonville with his friend Doug Peterson.
That'd be a smart move.
That's interesting, and there's no doubt that Jim Irsay was behind this quarterback change as well. We know that Frank Reich had a meeting with him. It sounds like it was basically mandated that they, move on from Matt Ryan. So maybe Frank Reich is he's finally glad to be out of there. Potentially might be a relief for him when you do have an owner like that that's dictating your moves on the field. That can't be fun. And when you do look at, to your point, with all these different quarterbacks, you have Andrew Luck. You go 10-6 with Andrew Luck. He fucking retires out of the blue. Brian Hoyer, you bring him in, he immediately got injured. Jacoby Brissett, you go 7-8 with him somehow. Phillip Rivers comes in there, goes like 11-5, 10-6. You make the playoffs and lose. Carson Wentz, you arguably should have made the playoffs with Carson Wentz. Some things went really bad at the end of the season, and then you bring in another old guy in Matt Ryan. So a lot of rough stuff for Frank Reich to deal with his tenure as the Indianapolis Colts head coach. And I think a big part of what ended up happening, too, is Matt Eberflus left that team to go to the Chicago Bears. You know what I mean? That was a big guy when you look at how good that defense was last year. Remove that defensive coordinator. He's gone. He's headed to the Bears now. And that defense does not look the same. It does not look like that same Indianapolis Colts defense that we were used to over the past couple of years with him there.
Also, Nick Sirianni leaving the Colts and going and taking that head coaching job in Philadelphia.
Yeah. Yeah, and hell, look at the route they're going right now at Philly. So no doubt about it. Indianapolis Colts still looking for answers, even all these years after Andrew Luck stepped away.
Yep.
The guy, speaking of coaching hires, the guy who might have talked his way into potentially getting hired at Auburn is Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze went in Liberty with his fourth string quarterback from Liberty on the road at Arkansas as like 15, 16, 17-point underdogs, one straight up. Probably because Freeze is auditioning for that Auburn job, even though the new AD at Auburn, is the AD that got Hugh Freeze in trouble at Ole Miss when he was the AD at Mississippi State. But it'll be he made quite a bid because that's once again, Freeze has a way of showing up some offensive creative minds. So we'll see if he's able to leapfrog Lane Kiffin in the hiring line at Auburn.
It'd be interesting. We did just have kickoff of the Ravens at the Saints. 5-3 Ravens, 3-5 Saints. Beardo, you got any predictions for this game before it really gets going?
I think I saw something today that Andy Dalton hasn't won a Monday Night Football a Monday Night Football game since 2014. So since Robert is a betting man, you don't kind of want to bet against that statistic. So I'll go ahead and I'll take the Ravens tonight over the Saints.
I already got my money on the Saints. I got some teaser money tied into the Saints at +8. Got some +2. I'm hoping the offense plays well against the Ravens tonight. I think the Ravens still have, the worst receiving crew now in the NFL with Bateman out. But they are finding ways to win, and they've upped up that defense. And Dalton has done some surprising stats with this Saints, so it'll be interesting to watch. But, yeah, I'll be cheering for the Saints, or at least my money will be.
Yeah. So it does seem to be one of those games probably going to be a little tight. I think the Ravens are going to pull it out. But, yeah, probably not by more than a score, though, based on how they have been playing lately. Yep. And that Saints team keeps grinding away for sure. Side note, it looks like Michael Thomas probably won't play the rest of the season.
He probably won't play for the Saints again.
Yeah, this is a guy who, what did he catch that one year, nearly 150 balls in one of Drew Brees' last seasons?
Yep.
And then he got injured 2 seasons in a row, basically. And
battling
this season,
wrist injuries, foot injuries. It's just he's hardly been on the field since Drew Brees retired.
Yeah, Michael Thomas was on a crazy fucking trajectory in terms of receivers that we'd probably never seen before. And 3 years of rough world for Michael Thomas now. But yeah, that's about it. But that's it, guys. The game did just kick off, so go check it out if you want to. I'm not sure if they're doing a Manning cast or not tonight, but either way, thanks for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. We had over 300 people watching on YouTube, had 50 or 60 watching on Rumble, so we do appreciate the audience. Glad to be back for Monday evening quarterback. Beardo, what do you have going on today?
All right, so tonight on my Twitch channel, I don't think there's an official time, but if it'll be after the Monday Night Football game on my Twitch channel. We will be doing another Red Dead Redemption Cowboy roleplay live stream where myself, and a few other members of Geeks and Gamers, we go on and we just, we roleplay voice act as cowboys in Red Dead Redemption. So it's been a very popular stream. A lot of people have had fun with it. So Twitch channel, Fear the Beardo. You'll find me on there live tonight doing that. And I'm also Fear the Beardo on YouTube and Twitter. So go ahead and check me out there. That's where you can find me.
There you go. And Robert, where can people find you, and where do they need to go for all the most updated insights in the sports betting world?
Yeah, we have sports betting information put out each day by a wide range of handicappers. I put out recommended official picks each week. Our profit rate is over 50% for the year. Doubled your money last year. Only cost $10 a month to join. We have live chats open throughout the weekend. I will have a live chat open all of tomorrow, Election Day, giving out political betting picks for those that want to get a little extra money on their Tuesday action. So for the best value in all of sports handicapping, sportspicks.locals.com.
There it is. Thank you, guys. We appreciate it. We'll be back on Wednesday night for Against the Spread right here, talking all about all the picks for the NFL week. Thank you to my guests for joining. Thank you to the chat for hanging out. We will talk to you next week. Peace.